Leafs GM Brad Treliving addresses the media and gives some big injury updates ahead of tonight's Battle of Ontario. Let's unpack it all on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? How you feeling on a Tuesday?
Feeling pretty good. It's a big week here big week in Canada, but big week for Toronto especially.
Why is it a big week in Canada? Oh, Grey Cup. Ah, yes. Is that? I'm assuming that's what you were getting at?
That's where I was getting at, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. For all you CFL people out there, you and Dave can all be really excited. It is unfortunate, though, that the Chad Kelly situation, breaking his ankle and won't be able to play for the Argos, try to win, what would be their second Grey Cup in 3 years?
Yep.
Would that have been? Yeah. So good luck to Nick Arbuckle, who will try and lead the charge against the Bombers, who every year end up making the freaking Grey Cup. It's insane how that team is so good year after year after year. All right. It's a big week in Leafland, too, obviously. Tonight, you got the Battle of Ontario with the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Ottawa Senators for the first time this season. So we'll tee up that game in a little bit. But, we just got off a big weekend. And apologies for not releasing a show on Monday. That's my bad. They apparently decided to do fire alarm testing in my building all day long, that it literally go door to door to every single one and just let the fire alarm run for like 2 seconds, and then they would come in, okay, it's working, then leave. And they did that for every single condo unit in this apartment, and there's like 1,000 of them. So it took all day, so we were unable to get a podcast, long story short. So we didn't get a chance to talk about the weekend at all. So why don't we quickly get into that before we can move on to the injury updates on Matthews, Pacioretty, Calle, Jarnkrok, an interesting update there. And then we get into our Battle of Ontario. But the Toronto Maple Leafs did pick up a valuable 4 points this weekend with a couple of victories. One over the Detroit Red Wings, and then obviously a big win over the Montreal Canadiens. They outscored their opponents 7-2 over that stretch. The power play continued to roll. What'd you make of the efforts this weekend, Dave?
I mean, great efforts. It wasn't just more so how many goals they scored and the power play being good. It was back to that defensive identity. That was, it started with against Boston, really.
Yeah.
But these last 3 games, they went back to being that tough team to play against 5-on-5 defensively. And that's Craig Berube telling this team, you play the right way, good things are going to happen. And the message is working because they're winning games, right? And they're winning them convincingly too. Like that Habs game, Montreal had no chance. No chance in that game. The way that the Leafs were defending and Montreal just couldn't generate anything. Detroit was a bit tougher. They did push right until the end, but yeah, that's I think what impressed me most is just their collective defensive effort has really been there the last 3 games.
Yeah, it really has been, and they've been fantastic. In those last 3 games, they've yet to allow a goal at 5-on-5. 3 straight games, 0 goals at 5-on-5, and it really should be attributed to the defensive play, as you mentioned. If you take a look at the high danger chances, you take a look at the shot charts, shot maps. They're keeping things pretty clean in front, not allowing teams to go and bully them within the slot and inner slot. Stolars and Woll able to see mostly every single shot, not allowing those rebound opportunities, the second and third opportunities. So Toronto's played really, really well in their own end, and it's exactly what you expect of a Craig Berube-led team. And it's the identity that they want to establish. So, maybe it took 10, 11, 12 games, dozen games into the season to get to this, where the Leafs are at right now. But it does feel as though they're really starting to get into a groove and mesh and figure something out. The weird part about it is they're doing this all without Auston Matthews, Dave. And again, people, do not hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying that this team is better off with Auston Matthews. They are not. Auston Matthews is one of the best players on the planet. So don't think that I'm saying that. But it is kind of funny that when he leaves, everyone else just feels like they need to step up and play a little bit better. And all of a sudden, the team's playing excellent in his absence. Not only at 5-on-5, but also on the power play that's been red hot all of a sudden.
Oh, it's the power play that's been the one I think everyone's saying like, oh, the Matthews effect. And I mean, sure,
it's
but
less
it's also
predictable, right?
Yeah.
It's less predictable. It's probably harder to defend.
It is, and you're not funneling the puck to Matthews every single time, right? The players are being forced to look at alternative options. William Nylander's been big on that, right? I think he's really helped get that power play going. Mitch Marner too. But like the whole Matthews dialogue here, the 3 games that they've won without him, the only team that's been, I would consider a tough matchup would have been Boston, because Boston, they haven't been able to beat Boston. But you got the Red Wings and the Canadiens who are at the bottom of the division. Even without Auston Matthews, you should be able to win those games with the way that those teams have been playing this year. So if they can beat, let's say they went up against the Florida Panthers and they won without Auston Matthews, then I give the team a little more credit like that. Then people can start having a little bit of that talk. But when it's against these teams, let's cool the jets a little bit here.
Well, I mean, yes, they should win these games, but these are games that they've lost a lot, right, in the past against the Montreals and the Detroits of the world. But I know what you're saying. It would be more impressive if it was against more top tier teams. But I guess what I do think, and a guy who deserves a lot of credit for kind of taking his game to the next level and being kind of the guy to assert himself in the lineup in Matthews' absence, and I really saw that this weekend in both games, is Mitch Marner. I thought he's playing some excellent hockey right now. He's made some big time plays and he's putting up numbers. So for me, a guy who's really stepped up is Mitch Marner with Auston Matthews out of the lineup, and we'll see if it continues tonight. Still no word on whether or not if Matthews is going to play against the Ottawa Senators. I believe
he's doubtful.
Doubtful, yes. As of now, he's doubtful. So probably unlikely to play him. And we'll show you what the lines looked like in a little bit at practice today in case he does not. But William Nylander continues to score too. So it's like Mitch Marner, William Nylander, they're kind of, saying, hey, put the team on my back. Let's go. Let's win some hockey games. And that's what they're able to do this weekend. And, they'll try and win, 4 straight tonight if they can beat the Ottawa Senators. So
yes.
Things are looking good. Anthony Stolarz, another beauty game for him too against the Red Wings. What was that save? Just grabbing pucks with his bare hand. He's like, I got this, guys. Dropping his blocker. He's just like, I got this save. Jesus. He's made a few really nice stops too. He had a couple backdoor saves, just getting over. Anthony Stolarz is turning into one of the biggest bargain deals from this free agent class, not just from the Maple Leafs, but the entire free agent class within the NHL. There's a couple of teams out there who spent big and acquired goaltenders, gave up trade draft capital, and traded some big time players. I mean, the Sens traded a first round pick to go out and get Linus Ullmark. Stolarz has been the healthier player of the two, and he's playing a lot better, and he's a hell of a lot cheaper than Linus Ullmark.
I was just about to say, and they also gave him a 4-year contract of over $8 million. How many? What did it come out to?
Yeah, a lot of money. I think it's like the 8.8, kind of the same contract. Maybe it was $8 million, but 8 and change, whatever it was. And Stolarz at $2.5 million has been better than both of them. Better than him, better than Jeremy Swayman. Has been, his numbers have been better than Jacob Markstrom's, who the Devils gave up a lot to go out and get. So, yeah, Stolarz has been a great addition for the Maple Leafs. Certainly Treliving's best addition since he's taken over as the general manager of the hockey club. And speaking of Treliving, came out to speak today to the media, which I was not anticipating. He gave us an update on the injury situation with a number of Maple Leafs. So we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll fill you in on the update, who's healthy, who's not, and we'll tee up tonight's Battle of Ontario. So that's what's coming up on the show. Leafs Sens tonight for the first time all season. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by SelectQuote. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammate when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right price to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone and out of their own net. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers, nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL.
Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NHL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On at Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you. As always, a Monday through Friday on the Locked On Leafs podcast, available wherever you get a podcast, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasts, and also up on YouTube. Congratulations, by the way, to the 2024 Hockey Hall of Fame class. Everybody was inducted last night, so congrats to them for getting their plaque in the Hall of Fame. Very well deserved by all. And actually, I picked up a Pavel Datsyuk Young Guns this weekend when I was at the Sports Card Expo. So that was a pretty nice pickup. It's a card that I do not have. I saw it. It was a good price, and I bought it. So
very nice.
I was happy with that. But yes, congrats to Datsyuk, Shea Weber, Jeremy Roenick, and the rest of the group for getting inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. So weirdly, not too sure why Brad Treliving decided to come out and speak today. I mean, I guess the answer is because there were a lot of updates to give when it comes to team injuries, I suppose, is a valid enough reason. But it just, Kyle Dubas didn't really do that too often. Like the Dubas era did not have him speaking with the media. They just left things up for us to find out on our own, realistically. But there were quite a few updates here when it came to the Maple Leafs and the injuries. Where should we start, Dave? Where do you think was the most pertinent piece of information from Brad Treliving's address today?
Well, I think Auston Matthews, just because we hadn't really gotten any sense of what is going on with Auston Matthews. We know that it's not related to the wrist injury. Is that kind of was it that Craig Berube had offered, and then we finally find out from Brad Treliving that this is something that he was dealing with during training camp. And essentially, they're saying they want to put this behind Matthews. They won't want this to be something that lingers as year goes on.
Yeah, and we had kind of thought that, like, he did miss most of training. He didn't play in a lot of the training camp games. He did leave that one, I think it was the second game or something like that, and then didn't really play. And then I think he might have got one final game in at the end there. But yeah, he missed a chunk of training camp. But then was ready to go for opening night, and apparently it's something that lingered, and they're deciding, let's just take a couple weeks here, a week or so, see if he can get healthy and then get rolling. But it's something that obviously, has affected his game. Like, he hasn't quite been as dominant as he was a year ago. And I wonder if that is, in relation to the injury, or, could just be an excuse, I suppose. Maybe he's just not having as good of a season, but that could speak to why the goals aren't quite dropping, why his shooting percentage is at 8%, not his traditional 16, and why he's maybe just a little off on some of his shots. Because maybe there's, something, maybe his back's jacked up, or he's got a knee issue or something that's, not allowing him to be at his full self. So again, doubtful whether or not he'll play tonight against the Ottawa Senators, but could play tomorrow in the second night of a back-to-back against the Washington Capitals. Little Ovi versus Matthews action would be pretty sweet. Max Pacioretty was probably the next big piece of news that we got today from Brad Treliving. He's going to be out week to week after suffering an injury over the weekend. It was a hamstring injury, and not sure exactly how long it's going to be, but it'll be a few weeks. He is placed on IR, and it's really unfortunate because I thought Pacioretty has been playing some pretty sound hockey for the Maple Leafs this year. Like, there wasn't high expectations on him coming off of, those Achilles injuries. He's now 35 and hasn't really played a lot of hockey the last 2 years. He was playing pretty good and giving this team a nice secondary, tertiary bit of offense. And now he's not there. Someone else going to have to step up.
Yeah, like what I appreciated from Pacioretty's game is he was bringing the physicality.
Yeah,
right?
finishing every check.
He wasn't playing perimeter hockey, right? He was actually, making the, John Tavares, William Nylander connection work at 5-on-5, which had been a very tough go for this Leafs team. And then you saw the injury, and like the reports were like, this was looking pretty bad, right? And then Treliving did say like it was better than what the team had expected. So like that's at least the positive news there, is that it wasn't as bad as what was initially feared.
Yeah, avoided any surgery, sounds like.
Yeah.
So just a rehab, but take a few weeks for that.
Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's gonna take some, especially because Pacioretty's been through the ringer with injuries. He had a feeling this is something that's going to take some time to get right. So fortunately, it's not as bad as initially feared, but you also hope that this isn't something that's going to linger as the year goes along.
No, because he could be a decent piece for the Maple Leafs. He's not what he used to be, obviously, but he's still showed that he can be effective on the power play at 5-on-5, on the forecheck. So hopefully he's healthy enough to get going at some point a little bit later on down the road and can remain healthy for this team somewhere in the middle six. That being said, next man up. Right. So whether it's Bobby McMahon or it's Nick Robertson, one of those two have an opportunity that they can grab and need to step up and add that element of secondary scoring that's left behind by Max Pacioretty. So those are kind of two guys who I'll be looking at over the next few weeks here to see if they can get going, get rolling. So Bobby McMahon, Nick Robertson, it's time for one of those two to step up for sure.
Yeah, and they again, some of these guys are going to be playing for jobs going forward that they need to start, providing a little bit of consistency. Unfortunately, Robertson got a goal called back against Detroit. Looked like a pretty nice effort. Called back on the goaltender interference, but like they got to start, again, it's that need to continue to get the depth scoring, but also versatility from the guys on the third line that can step up and play in the second line with when there's injuries.
Calle Jarnkrok, who is a player that we haven't heard about in a while. It's been really strange, what's been going on with Jarnkrok. He, got hurt early in camp, then came back, and then got hurt again, and then was told that he needed a couple of days. He was still a couple of days away at the beginning of the season, and then randomly ended up on not IR, but LTIR. And it was all very bizarre what was happening with Calle Jarnkrok. And then it's been a month and we haven't heard anything, haven't seen him skating where the other players who've been injured have been. And we found out that there's been a setback in Calle Jarnkrok's return. So not exactly sure what that means or what the setback is, but there was a setback. So not expected to see our boy Calido anytime soon.
No, and again, it gets to people wondering, what's the future for Calle Jarnkrok on this team, because while we know he's a decent value for what he brings to the team, he also needs to start playing, right? Like we gotta, that's been his biggest problem the last couple of years. He has not been able to remain healthy, and so I do think that it'd be nice if we can, if this is, this time off will hopefully lead to him having, a run of not having to deal with injuries, but at the same time, it hasn't really gone down that route. And so, yeah, I'm sure he's frustrated because I still think he provides value, but when he's not playing, it's hard to see what value he really brings.
Well, here's the other part. Like, there's where the conspiracy theorists are out there, and they're throwing around the phrase, the term we all know well in Leafland, Roboddo Island. Is this trending towards a Roboddo Island type of situation? Like, I don't know. Like, he's not an old player. He's like 30 years old, 31 maybe. Like, it's not as though his career's over, I don't think. Like, or a Joffrey Lupul situation, I guess maybe is more appropriate than. But like, I don't know. Again, that's just what the conspiracy theorists are saying. I'm not saying that. Conspiracy theorists are saying that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes. With yeah, because if he's out, if there's like another setback or there's something else, or he gets a bad opinion, it almost reminds me also of like the Evander Kane situation right now in Edmonton, where he's got a sports hernia.
Kane underwent surgery, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
where there was an actual timeline. This is just like,
this one here.
No one knows what's going on.
No, we don't know if there's been a surgery. We don't know if maybe he's trying to avoid surgery, and that's because I think when Kane was initially dealing with it, he was putting off surgery because it was the playoffs, and once you have the surgery, it's done, right? And he probably wanted to hold out hope he was going to play again. In this case here with Jarnkrok, I wonder if surgery happens, does that mean for him it's almost like a realization that he's going to be out a long time. So the fact that he's seeing a specialist in New York would lead me to suggest that this is something that's going to require some significant attention at some point.
Yeah. And so we'll see where that goes. I'm sure there'll be some sort of additional information on that once he sees a specialist, and maybe that puts more of a time frame on what's going on with Calle Jarnkrok. Really quickly, Connor Dewar has been skating with the team for the past couple of days. Jani Hakanpaa skated with the team for the first time. His first practice still needs to be cleared, apparently, according to Brad Treliving. That was kind of the information we got from Hakanpaa. But I would think Connor Dewar is probably going to start tonight, I would think, in the game against the Ottawa Senators. And what makes me believe that the activation probably is going to come is the fact that Matt Benning was waived today by the Maple Leafs, opening up a roster spot. Kind of makes sense that Connor Dewar will probably take up that roster spot.
Yeah, the fact that they're both back, because initially it was like, we might want to get them a few more games on the conditioning stint. And then, I think almost like a couple of days later, Dewar was called up with the Matthews.
Then injuries hit, and it's like, actually, we
Yeah.
need you.
Yeah, actually, can you?
Look at that! You're conditioned. Wow.
So funny how that happens. But yeah, for Dewar to come back, yeah, they needed to do the Benny. Or I don't. They'll probably move someone to LTIR, or I don't know how much room they have on LTIR if they want.
Well, if Pacioretty's going to be out a few weeks, he'll probably end up, because I think he was placed on injured reserve today as like that paper move, but I think eventually he'll be an LTIR candidate, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. And that leads me to believe, that there's more. Hakanpaa is not far off. If he doesn't play against the Senators, he's likely playing a game. This week. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, I'm with you. Was there anything else? Anything else that was mentioned today? I think that was pretty much all the updates we got. There was a long list, like Pacioretty, Hakanpaa, Jarnkrok, Matthews, Dewar. Like, whew, geez Louise, there has not been a lot of good health news for the Maple Leafs this season. They've been the injury bug has definitely made its way around the room. That's for sure. Domi and Nylander weren't at practice today, but that was just a maintenance day. So they are expected to play in the game tonight against the Ottawa Senators. Speaking of the game against the Ottawa Senators, why don't we take a break? We'll come back and we'll tee things up, get you ready for the first installment of the Battle of Ontario for the 24-25 season. We'll do that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks put its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. I'm Mike DiStefano with my co-host Dave Morassutti. You can find the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube. New episodes coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, all season long. So make sure that you are subscribed to the show and keep your eyes and ears peeled whenever we release new episodes daily. Speaking of, also, I joined the Locked On Sens boys on their podcast today. So we did a little mini crossover and, I definitely talked some smack. Let me say that. So I got the party started with the Battle of Ontario on the Locked On Sens podcast. There was a little bit of trash talking going back and forth, and I represented the Toronto side well, I think, Dave.
Leave it to the Sens boys to let you go in on the battle by yourself.
I know, right? They're trying to tell. It's insane. They didn't even want to try and get Dave in there. They knew that the two of us would absolutely whoop their butt when it came to a smack talking competition. But no, the Battle of Ontario, man, reigniting for the first time this season. Look, the Senators are a good team. They're actually a quality squad at this point now. I think this only fuels this battle, though. Like, when you've got two teams who are super competitive. That being said, I mean, the Senators have always played the Leafs well, right, Dave? Like, you look back, they've won 3 of the last 4 games against Toronto. Do you remember what happened the last time that these two teams faced off against each other?
Oh, did somebody get a suspension following that game?
Someone did get a suspension following that game, and it was Morgan Rielly of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was the Ridley Gregg game, the last time these two teams faced each other. That's a long spin since the Leafs and Sens played. When Ridley Gregg wired in a slapper from like 5 feet from the net, open net to ice the game. And obviously, the Maple Leafs didn't like that, especially Morgan Rielly. He went after him and ended up getting, was it a 5-gamer? Like, it was a pretty hefty suspension for Morgan
Yeah, like
Rielly.
5 games.
Yeah. I'm curious. Like, you think that there's going to be, I don't know, any bad blood that'll be carried over into this game from that incident?
I'm sure if Ridley Gregg now knows that more, certain guys may react a certain way, wouldn't surprise me if he tries to do that because he's that type of player that's going to try to get under their skin. And the Senators have been a very feisty group this year.
Ridley Gregg is like he's little Brad Marchand, little bleep disturber out there on the ice. So he knows what he's doing. He knew what he was doing in that game too. And Morgan Rielly was just willing to pay the price of shutting him up. Cost him 5 games. A little bit of money out of his bank account. But to him, well worth it. We'll see. He'll have an opportunity to line him up for a hit, or maybe someone else gives him a go. But I'll be curious if maybe someone goes after Rielly, like on the other side. Like does Brady Tkachuk go after Rielly, or does someone else? That's kind of where I'm thinking. Like for Greg getting attacked, is there going to be retribution on the other side? I'm not sure. I'll be interested, but I mean it's a battle of Ontario. There's always tempers flaring. So even if it's not because of the Ridley Gregg, Morgan Rielly incident, there's still going to be some bad blood here because these guys have battled for years now. And, they both have new head coaches, right? And their new coaches, or the players are still trying to put on a show and still trying to impress their coaches. And, there's no better way to impress them by putting on a show for the Battle of Ontario. Why don't we take a look at what the lineups look like, Dave, on in practice on Monday? They looked a little different than what they typically will, and definitely more different than what they're going to look like in the game tonight. So at practice, it was Nyes, Dewar, and Marner. Max Domi will take the place of Connor Dewar here, I would imagine, as the top line center. He was out on maintenance today. McMahon, Tavares, and Benning was the second line, and again, Nylander out on maintenance. He will probably end up playing second line instead of Benning, obviously. Robertson, Holmberg, and Myers. Again, do not expect for Philip Myers to be playing in this game. And then Lorenz Camp and Reeves as the fourth line. Then the D pairings look pretty much the same that it's looked the last few games. Riley, Ekman Larson, McCabe, Tanev, and then Benoit and Connor Timmins. So based on this, though, Dave, it looks like Bobby McMahon is going to get that Max Pacioretty slot on the second line, and he'll have an opportunity to the first opportunity to take that next step and grab that chance there. And he did that pretty well last year when he had an opportunity to play on the second line with John Tavares, right? He really, really kind of took the game by the horns and played well. There was what he scored, 7 goals in a 5-game span when he got that opportunity. So we'll see if he can do it again.
I think he also just plays more to what Craig Berube wants. He's also a better defensive player than Nick Robertson. So if you're going to have that line, have Tavares and Nylander together, you need to have someone with, a little more jam to their game. McMahon certainly has that. Like, he's a physical presence. Yeah. He's going to go and do the forechecking and stuff like that too.
Yeah. They have been deploying them as a heavy offensive zone start line, whereas Marner, Matthews, and Nyes have been starting on the D end, and the fourth line has getting a lot of D zone starts. But yeah, for sure, I think that's the right decision to see what McMahon can do, and then Robertson after that. See if it doesn't work. All right, let's try Robertson now. But either way, that's what the lineup's going to look like tonight, and I would imagine Anthony Stolarz is going to start, and then we'll probably see Joseph Woll tomorrow night against the Washington Capitals. I wouldn't think anything different, would you?
No, again, it's a back-to-back situation. They've been going Stolarz first, Woll second. Both goalies been playing well, so yeah, I think it's only fitting they're probably going to roll out the same rotation again.
What's the key to victory tonight, Dave?
Special teams continue that dominate the special teams battle. I think Ottawa's got a tendency to take penalties. They're not the most disciplined team out there. So I think, you gotta continue to work that. They're not very consistent either. They've had a very they came off a pretty emotional victory over Boston with Ullmark making his first start against his former team and winning that game in overtime. But they're also a team that's has had a lot of ups and downs this year. So I think you gotta take advantage of any of those miscues they're gonna have.
Weirdly, it's a team too that's really been back and forth. Like I didn't think that was going to be as much of a tandem as it's turned out to be in Ottawa, but they're alternating starts right now. Allmark Forsberg, Allmark Forsberg, Allmark Forsberg. That's kind of interesting for a goalie that's making $8 million out in Ottawa. So we'll see if the Leafs can get to him early and often tonight. Should be a good game. They usually are when the Battle of Ontario rolls into town. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We will recap tonight's Battle of Ontario, get you set for tomorrow night's game between the Leafs and Capitals. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.